The night was cold and heavy. The sky was covered with dark clouds, and the ground below was nothing but broken rocks and dead soil. In the middle of this wasteland walked a small figure, weak and slow. It was a child, but not a human child. Her skin was pale blue. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and her tiny hands shook as she tried to keep walking. She had no family with her, no one to hold her hand, no one to tell her she was safe. She was cast out, abandoned by her own people. They had left her behind because they thought she was different. They thought she was weak. They thought she would only bring trouble. The child stumbled over the sharp stones. Her feet were bare, her breath was shallow, and her body was thin like a fragile branch. She had not eaten for days, her stomach ached, her lips were dry. Her small heart beat fast, but her hope was fading. All around her the land was silent. But it was not the silence of peace, it was the silence of danger. The kind of silence that comes before something strikes. From the dark cracks in the rocks came whispers, low growls, the sound of creatures that waited for her to fall. Shadows moved, eyes glowed in the distance. Predators were watching her every step. The child tried to walk faster, but her legs were weak. She could barely lift her feet. Suddenly she tripped and fell. Her knees hit the ground hard. A cry escaped her lips, but there was no one to hear. Only the creatures in the shadows. And they were ready. One of the shadows moved closer. A tall beast with claws stepped into the dim light. Its mouth opened, showing sharp teeth that dripped with saliva. The sound it made was low and hungry. The child froze. She wanted to run, but her body would not move. She was too tired, too weak. The beast took another step, then another. Its eyes locked on her small form. It growled louder, ready to jump. The child closed her eyes. A single tear ran down her cheek. She thought it was the end. She thought no one would save her. Then out of nowhere, the silence of the night broke. A thunderous sound filled the air. The ground shook. A flash of light cut through the dark. The beast screamed. Its body fell to the ground with a heavy thud. Smoke rose from its chest. The child opened her eyes in shock. In front of her stood a figure she had never seen before. Tall, strong, covered in strange armor. In his hands was a weapon unlike anything she knew. A weapon that glowed with fire. It was a human. His eyes sharp. His body tense, he looked at the dead beast. Then at the child. For a moment the night seemed frozen. Only the wind moved, carrying dust and ashes. The child trembled. She did not know if this new figure was friend or enemy. Her people had told her that humans were dangerous, that humans were cruel, but this human had saved her. He stood like a wall between her and the shadows, his weapon ready to fire again. The other creatures growled from the darkness, but they did not step closer. They had seen what the human could do. One by one, their glowing eyes vanished into the night. The wasteland grew quiet again. The human slowly lowered his weapon. He looked down at the child, his eyes softened. He could see how thin she was, how weak and tired. He reached out his hand, but the child shrank back. She was scared. She could not trust him, not yet. The human did not force her. Instead, he knelt down. He placed a small pack on the ground and opened it. Inside was food, warm and fresh. The smell made the child's stomach twist with hunger. The human pushed it toward her, then stepped back. The child looked at the food, then at the human. Her hands shook as she reached out. She grabbed the food and ate quickly. Her eyes filled with tears. She had not tasted kindness in so long. The human watched her silently, his face calm, but inside he was thinking. He had not expected to find a child here, and certainly not an alien child. He wondered why she was alone, why her people had left her. But those questions could wait for now. The important thing was simple. The child was alive. She was safe. And for the first time in a long time, she was not alone. The alien child sat in the dust, her small hands clutching the food tightly. She ate as if every bite might be her last. Her glowing eyes stayed fixed on the human. Watching every move he made, she did not trust him, not yet. But she could not deny that he had saved her life. The human stood still, letting her finish. His armor shone faintly in the moonlight, scratched and scarred from old battles. His face was rough, his eyes sharp, yet there was a strange warmth hidden behind that cold look. He had seen many things, but this child was something new. When she finished, the child wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. She tried to stand, but her legs shook, and she nearly fell again. The human stepped forward quickly, catching her before she hit the ground. His arms were strong, but his touch was careful. The child froze in his grasp. Her people had told her humans were cruel. They had warned that humans would capture and destroy anything they did not understand. But this man did not hurt her. He simply steadied her, then slowly let her stand on her own. She whispered something in her own tongue. Soft and broken, the human did not understand. But the fear in her voice was clear. He shook his head gently, pointing to his chest. "Safe," he said. His voice was deep but calm. "You are safe," the child blinked. She had never heard that word spoken with such certainty. For a long moment she just stared at him, her small heart torn between fear and the strange feeling of safety he gave. The night around them was still dangerous. Shadows still moved in the distance. The human knew more creatures would come. He looked at the child, then at the horizon. He had to move, but could he take her with him? He turned and started walking, then paused. He looked back and held out his hand. His voice came again. Steady and firm. "Come," he said. The child hesitated. Her instincts told her to run away, to hide, but her body was too weak and deep inside. She did not want to be alone anymore. Slowly, she placed her trembling hand in his. The human pulled her close and began leading her through the wasteland. His steps were heavy and sure. Each time the child stumbled, he steadied her. Each time the cold wind made her shiver. He placed part of his cloak around her shoulders. As they moved, the child's eyes kept scanning the dark, expecting monsters, but wherever the shadows seemed to gather, the human was there, his weapon ready. He was like a shield walking beside her. Hours passed, the land stretched endlessly, and the child grew more tired. Her feet dragged, her head hung low. The human finally stopped near the broken remains of a stone wall. Once it might have been part of a building. Now it was only rubble. He guided her to sit and then knelt beside her. From his pack, he pulled a small container. Inside was clear water. He held it out. The child looked at it with wide eyes. Her throat burned with thirst. Slowly, she took it and drank. The water spilled down her chin, but she did not stop. The human watched her with patience. When she finished, she gave the container back with both hands, her eyes lowered. It was the first sign of respect she had shown him. For a while, neither spoke. The wind howled softly through the ruins. The child leaned against the stone. Her eyelids heavy, she wanted to stay awake. But her body was too weak. Slowly, she drifted into sleep. The human looked down at her. In her small face, he saw both fear and courage. She had survived alone in a place where most grown soldiers would not last a night. He wondered why her people had cast her out. He wondered what secret they were hiding. As the night deepened, the human stayed awake, his weapon in his hands, his eyes scanning the horizon. He was used to battlefields, used to danger. But something about protecting this child felt different. It was not duty. It was not orders. It was something deeper, something human. When the child stirred in her sleep, shivering, the human shifted closer. He wrapped more of his cloak around her. Letting her rest against him, she murmured softly, her alien words broken by sleep. But there was less fear now. In that silent moment, the human made a choice. He would not leave her behind, no matter the risk, no matter the danger. He would protect her. She was not just a stranger anymore. She was his responsibility. Far away in the shadows, glowing eyes appeared once more. The hunters of her kind had begun their search. They would not forgive the child for surviving. They would not forgive the human for standing in their way, but for now, in the ruins, the child slept safely for the first time in her short life, and the human sat like a guardian carved from stone, ready for whatever came next. The morning came slowly. A pale light crept over the wasteland, touching the broken stones and the dust that floated in the cold air. The human sat with his weapon across his knees. His eyes were tired but sharp. He had not slept, not even for a moment. Beside him, the child stirred, her small body curled under the cloak he had given her. She blinked her glowing eyes, confusion flickering across her face. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then she saw him sitting like a statue beside her, guarding her through the night. She pulled the cloak tighter around her shoulders. It was the first warmth she had felt in many nights. Slowly, she sat up. Her gaze met his. There was still fear there, but less than before. The human reached into his pack and handed her another piece of food. She hesitated, then took it, eating quietly. The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of the wind, but the human wanted answers. He needed to know who she was and why she had been left here alone. He tapped his chest again. "Safe," he said. Then he pointed at her. "Name?" The child blinked, her lips moved, and in a soft, Trembling voice, she spoke a word in her own tongue. The sound was strange, delicate, almost like a song. The human repeated it awkwardly. His voice rough, but she gave a small nod. Her name had been spoken, and it was no longer lost. For the first time, the child tried to speak in the human's language. Her words were broken, heavy with her alien accent, but she managed. "Cast out," she whispered. Her voice cracked as if the words carried pain too deep to hold. The human frowned. He understood enough. She had been abandoned. He looked at her carefully, waiting, letting her speak more. The child touched her chest, then pointed to the sky. Her hands shook as she tried to explain. Her people had feared her, they had called her cursed. They had seen something inside her, something they did not understand, and instead of protecting her, they had thrown her away. Her voice broke into sobs. Her thin shoulders shook. She tried to hide her face. But the human reached out. Gently lowering her hands, he did not speak. But his presence was enough. His silence told her that he did not see her as cursed. He saw her as a child, one who deserved to live. Through broken words and gestures, more of her story came. She had once lived among shining towers, a great city of her people, but from the time she was small, strange things happened around her. Lights flickered, winds stirred without reason. Dreams burned into waking visions. Her people grew afraid. They whispered that she was unnatural, that she carried danger inside her. One day the whispers turned into action. Her family turned their faces away. The elders declared her unfit. They left her on the edge of the wasteland with nothing but the clothes on her back. If she lived, it would be by chance. If she died, they would not mourn. The human listened in silence, his jaw tight. He had seen cruelty in many forms, but to cast away a child was a crime even in war. His eyes softened when he looked at her. She was not cursed, she was not dangerous. She was only a child who had been denied love. He noticed something else too. In the way she spoke, in the way her hands moved, he could see intelligence, courage, and strength. She had survived alone where most would have perished. She had faced fear night after night and had not given up. That was not weakness, that was power. The child watched him carefully, waiting for the disgust, waiting for him to turn away like her people had done. Instead, he simply nodded, his voice low and firm. "Strong," he said. Pointing to her, her eyes widened. She shook her head, tears shining in them. "Weak," she whispered back. But the human shook his head again, louder this time. "Strong," the word echoed in the ruins. The child stared at him, stunned. No one had ever called her strong. No one had ever believed in her. A warmth spread in her chest, fragile but real. The bond between them grew in that moment, not from words, but from truth. The human had chosen to see her differently. He had given her something her people had never given, hope. But as they shared this quiet, the wind carried another sound. The faint call of horns in the distance, low and haunting. The human stiffened. He knew that sound was not the cry of wild beasts. It was organized, it was hunting. The child froze, her small body shaking. She knew that sound too. It was the call of her own people. The hunters sent to finish what they had begun. They would not allow her to live. And now they would not allow the human to live either. The human tightened his grip on his weapon. His eyes burned with fire. He looked down at her. Not with pity, but with promise. He had heard her secret, he knew her past. And now he would fight to protect her future. The sound of horns rolled across the barren land. Low and deep, like the voice of the earth itself, the child's glowing eyes widened. She pressed her small hands over her ears, shaking her head again and again. She whispered in her broken words, "They come! They come!" The human's jaw tightened. His grip on his weapon grew firm. He had fought many enemies, but this hunt was different. These were not beasts of the wasteland. They were soldiers, skilled and merciless. They had come for a child, and now they would come for him too. Dust rose on the horizon, faint at first, then stronger. Shapes moved in the distance. Tall figures cloaked in armor of dark metal. Their steps were heavy, their weapons long and sharp. They walked with the cold patience of hunters who knew their prey could not escape. The child clung to the human's arm. Her body trembled like a leaf in the wind. She whispered, "No safe."
No safe. Her people had once been her home.
But now they were her hunters. The human knelt beside her. His eyes met hers, his voice was low, steady. "Safe," he said. He placed a hand on her shoulder, then he stood tall, his body like a wall between her and the danger. The hunters drew closer. Their horns fell silent. The wasteland grew still as if even the wind held its breath. The child hid behind the broken stones. Peering through cracks, her heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to run, but her legs would not obey. The human did not run. He walked forward slowly, his weapon raised. He had no fear in his eyes, only resolve. He had chosen to protect her, and nothing would break that choice. The first hunter stepped into clear view. His armor gleamed black under the pale sun. His face was hidden by a mask of bone. His voice hissed through the air. "Give her, human, she is ours, she is cast out." "She must not live," the human's reply was sharp. "She lives," his voice cut like steel. The hunter tilted his head. A low laugh echoed. "Then you die with her." The hunters spread out. Moving like shadows, they circled the ruins where the child hid. Their weapons glowed with cruel light. Each step they took was slow, deliberate, certain. The human's eyes narrowed. His finger rested on the trigger. His heart beat steady. He knew he was outnumbered. But retreat was not in his nature. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would face them again. The first strike came swift. A hunter leaped from the rocks above. Blade flashing, the human spun, firing his weapon. A burst of fire roared through the air. The hunter screamed, his body falling in smoke and ash. The others did not pause, they charged as one. The air filled with the sound of clashing metal and crackling energy. The child covered her ears, tears streaking her face. She wanted to close her eyes, but she could not. She could not stop watching. The human fought like a storm. His weapon sang with fire, his fists struck with steel. Each move was sharp, each breath measured. He was only one man. But he moved as if an army lived inside him. Yet the hunters were many. Blades cut the air around him, sparks lit the ruins. The ground shook under their clash. One hunter's spear scraped across his armor. Another's blade struck his arm. Blood darkened the metal, but still he stood. The child's heart broke as she saw him bleed. She whispered to herself, "Strong, strong," repeating his word. The word he had given her, she wanted to help. But she was too small, too weak. The hunters pressed harder, their voices rising in cruel chants. "Cast out must die. Cast out must die." Their words cut deeper than their weapons. They wanted the child broken before they broke her body. The human's roar silenced them. He struck one hunter down, then another. His weapon burned through the dark. His blood painted the stones, but his spirit did not break. At last, a heavy silence fell. Bodies lay in the dust, smoke rising from their armor. The human stood, his chest heaving, his weapon still glowing. The few hunters who remained stepped back, their courage shaken. Their eyes flicked to the child, then to the man who refused to fall. One of them hissed, "This is not the end. She cannot escape her fate, neither can you." With that, they vanished into the wasteland, fading into the shadows like smoke in the wind. The child ran to the human, her tiny hands clutching his arm. His armor was cut, blood dripping from the wounds. He staggered but did not fall. He looked at her. His eyes still sharp, still alive, she whispered, "Why? Why save me?" Her voice cracked with confusion. The human knelt despite the pain, his hand rested on her shoulder. His voice steady even as blood stained the ground. "Because you deserve to live." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. No one had ever spoken those words to her. Not her people, not her family, no one but him in that moment. She understood. He was not just a protector. He was her only ally in a world that wanted her gone. But far in the distance, the horn sounded again. Louder, closer. The hunt was not finished, it was only beginning. The wasteland was quiet again, but the silence was not peace. It was the silence before another storm. The human leaned against the broken stone, his blood dripping slowly onto the dust. His chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. Yet his eyes never closed. His grip on his weapon never loosened. The child sat close to him, her small hands pressed against his arm as if she could hold him together. She did not know how to heal, but she wanted to help. Her glowing eyes searched his face, filled with fear, not of him, but of losing him. The sound of horns echoed once more in the distance. Closer now, the hunters were regrouping. They would return stronger. But the child's thoughts were not on them. They were on the man who had stood between her and death. She whispered softly, "Strong," repeating the word he had given her. Her voice shook, but her heart wanted to believe it. The human turned his head. His lips curved faintly into a tired smile. Even in pain, he wanted her to feel hope. He placed a bloody hand on her shoulder. "You too," he whispered. His voice was weak but sure. Strong, the child shook her head. No, weak, she whispered back. But even as she said the word, something stirred inside her. A strange warmth deep in her chest, it felt like fire trapped under her skin. She pulled her hands away from him. Staring at her palms, a faint glow shimmered in them, soft and flickering like the first spark of a flame. Her breath caught, she gasped and hid her hands quickly. Her people had called this a curse, it was the reason they cast her out. If the human saw, he would turn away too. But he had already seen, his sharp eyes missed nothing. He looked at her hands, then at her face. He did not speak at first, only studying her. The silence made her tremble. She waited for anger, for fear, but instead, he nodded slowly. Power, he said, his voice calm, his eyes steady. The child froze, her tears welled. No, curse, she whispered. The word cracked like broken glass. The human shook his head. His voice rose with strength, not curse. Power. He pointed to her chest, then to the horizon. Inside you, strong. Her heart pounded. She had never heard those words before. All her life she had been told she was wrong. She was dangerous, she was unwanted. Yet here was a man who saw her differently, who spoke of strength, not shame. The warmth inside her grew stronger. Her hands trembled as the glow returned. Brighter this time, sparks of light danced across her skin. They lit the shadows around them. The broken stones shimmered with soft blue light. The human watched with calm eyes, not fear. His mind worked quickly. He realized this was why her people hunted her. They feared what she could become, but he saw something else. If this power grew, it could be the key to survival. Not just for her, but perhaps for many. The child felt the glow pulse with her heartbeat. It frightened her, but it also felt alive. For the first time, she did not want to push it away. She looked at the human, searching his face for rejection. Instead, she saw belief. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Me, strong." The human nodded once, firm and certain. Strong, the word echoed inside her, filling the empty spaces where fear had lived. She closed her eyes and the glow brightened. The stones around her trembled softly. Dust lifted into the air. A faint hum rolled through the ground. The human steadied himself as the earth shifted. He kept his weapon ready, but his gaze never left her. He was not afraid, he was proud. The glow faded slowly, leaving only the child's heavy breathing. Her small body slumped, exhausted. The human reached out and caught her before she fell. He held her gently, whispering, "Enough." Rest of the child leaned against him, her eyelids heavy, but her heart lighter than it had ever been. She had shown her secret, and he had not cast her away. For the first time in her short life, she felt like she belonged. But the danger was not gone. The horn sounded again, this time so close that the ground shook. The hunters were coming fast. They had felt the surge of her power, and it had only deepened their fear and rage. The human rose slowly, lifting her into his arms. His wounds ached. His blood stained the ground, but he did not falter. He carried her as if she weighed nothing, his weapon still in his hand, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The child clung to him weakly, her voice faint. "They fear me." The human's answer was sharp, like steel cutting through the wind. "Then let them fear." The wasteland stretched before them, filled with danger, filled with enemies, but now there was something more. There was a bond. There was a power awakening, and together they would face whatever came. The sky turned darker as the horns grew louder. The sound was not far now. It rolled across the wasteland like thunder, carrying fear with it. The human carried the child in his arms, his blood dripping with every step. His body was tired, but his spirit burned like fire. The child pressed her small face against his chest. Her glowing eyes stared at the ground. She could feel the hunters closing in, their voices carried on the wind. Harsh and cruel. Cast out must die, the curse must end. The human reached the edge of a canyon. The cliffs rose high on both sides, sharp and jagged. There was no clear path forward, only narrow stone bridges and broken ledges. He set the child down gently. Placing her behind a wall of rock, his voice was steady, though his body shook from pain. "Stay safe." The child shook her head, her hands clinging to his arm. "No, not leave me." "Not alone." Her voice cracked, heavy with fear. The human placed his hand on her head, his eyes sharp and calm. "Never alone," he said. Then he turned. Standing tall against the wind, his weapon hummed with energy. His armor broken but unbowed, he waited. The hunters arrived like shadows from the mist. Their armor gleamed dark, Their blades glowed with cruel light. They fanned out, surrounding the canyon walls. Their leader stepped forward, his mask carved with ancient symbols. His voice was sharp like broken glass. "Human, step aside, she is ours." "You bleed for nothing." The human raised his weapon. His answer was short. "She lives," the hunters hissed, their chants rising in unison. "Cast out must die. Cast out must die." Their voices shook the canyon. Echoing like a curse, the first wave attacked. Blades flashed. The human fired. A storm of fire and steel filled the canyon. He moved like a machine, every strike fierce. Every breath controlled. One hunter fell. Then another, but more came. They swarmed like a tide. The child watched in horror, her hands shaking. The glow in her chest stirred again, stronger than before. She felt heat rising through her veins. Her fear twisted into something else, something fierce. She could not sit and watch him fall. The human fought with all his strength. But he was only one man. Blades cut into his side. A spear pierced his shoulder. He roared in pain but did not fall. He swung his weapon, pushing them back, but his knees buckled. His blood painted the stones red. The child screamed, her small voice cutting through the chaos. "Stop!" Her eyes burned with tears, her chest burned with light. Her hands glowed so bright they lit the canyon. The ground trembled under her. Stones cracked, dust lifted into the air. The hunters froze for a moment, their eyes turned to her. Fear flickered even behind their masks. "The curse," they hissed, "it awakens the human." Bleeding and shaking, turned his head toward her. His lips curved into a weak smile, he whispered. "Strong." The word reached her heart. The word became fire inside her. The child stood, her small body trembling but unbroken. Her glowing hands rose, the light burst outward, filling the canyon with blinding power. The hunters staggered. Their weapons shook in their hands. The ground cracked open, rocks splitting. A wave of energy shot from the child. Throwing the hunters back, their chants broke into screams. Their armor shattered. The human shielded his eyes. But he did not fear. He had seen power before, but never power born from innocence. Never power born from pain turned into strength. The child's voice rose above the chaos. No longer broken, no longer weak. "Not curse," she cried, "power!" The canyon shook as her light grew stronger. The hunters tried to charge, but their steps faltered. Their blades melted in their hands. Their voices turned from rage to terror. One by one they fell, the light consuming them, driving them into the dust. The storm of power slowly faded. The canyon grew quiet once more. The dust settled and the glow dimmed. The child swayed, her body weak. She had given everything, her knees buckled. But before she could fall, the human caught her. Pulling her into his arms, she looked up at him, her glowing eyes fading into exhaustion, her voice soft but sure. "Me strong." The human's face was pale with blood loss, but his eyes burned with pride. He nodded, his voice firm even through the pain. "Strong." The child closed her eyes. A faint smile on her lips for the first time in her life. She believed it. Around them, the canyon lay broken. The hunters were gone, scattered like ash. The silence that followed was not the silence of fear, but the silence after victory. The human stood weakly, holding the child close. His steps slow, but his spirit unbroken. They had survived not by chance, but by choice, by strength, by the bond they shared. Far above, the clouds parted, letting a beam of light shine down on the canyon. The wasteland was still dangerous, but something had changed. The child was no longer a victim. She was no longer cursed. She was power. She was hope, and together they were unstoppable. The canyon lay silent. The ground was cracked, the stones broken, and the air still smelled of smoke and dust. The bodies of hunters were scattered across the rocks, their armor shattered, their weapons ruined. The battle was over, but its weight still hung heavy in the air. The human stood among the ruins, his armor torn, his body bleeding. Yet his eyes still sharp, in his arms he carried the child. Her head resting against his chest, her glowing eyes were half closed, her body weak from the storm of power she had released. For a moment, they were the only living souls in the canyon. The wind moved softly, carrying away the ashes of their enemies. The child stirred faintly, whispering through cracked lips, "They gone?" The human looked around, scanning the shadows. His voice was steady, firm. "Gone." Her lips curved into the smallest smile. Her body relaxed against him, for the first time in her life. She had faced her people and survived. She had stood against fear and proved she was more than they believed. But the human knew the truth. This was not the end. Her people would not stop. The hunters would return, stronger, more prepared. The power she carried was too great, and they feared it too much. Yet he also knew something else. She was no longer helpless, she was no longer alone. He carried her out of the canyon, his steps heavy but unbroken. The sun broke through the clouds. Spilling light over the wasteland, the world looked different. Not less dangerous, but less hopeless. They walked until he found shelter under the ruins of an old tower. The stones were cracked, vines twisting through the walls, but it was strong enough to keep the wind away. He set her down gently, placing his cloak around her shoulders. She leaned against the wall, her eyes following his every move. The human cleaned his wounds quickly, his face calm despite the blood. He was used to pain, but when he looked at the child, he felt something new. He felt purpose. Not duty, not orders, but a bond that tied him to her fate. The child's voice was soft, broken. "Why help me? You could leave safer alone." The human knelt in front of her. His eyes steady, his hand rested on her shoulder. "Because you are not curse," he said, his voice strong. "You are hope." Her glowing eyes widened. Her heart beat fast. No one had ever spoken such words to her. Hope not burden, hope not danger. For the first time, she saw herself as more than cast out. Tears slid down her cheeks, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of something new, she whispered. "Me? Hope?" The human nodded, his voice soft but firm. "Yes, hope." She closed her eyes and held the word in her heart. The glow inside her pulsed faintly. Not wild, not out of control, but calm. For the first time she did not fight it. She accepted it, she belonged. Night fell slowly. The stars spread across the sky. The human sat awake, guarding as always. The child slept peacefully beside him, her breathing steady. For once, her dreams were not filled with fear. In the distance, lights flickered far beyond the wasteland. The human's sharp eyes caught them. He knew it was not safe. He knew the hunters were not finished. But he also knew something had changed. The child's power was no longer hidden. It was no longer fear, it was fire waiting to grow. At dawn, the child woke. She stretched weakly and looked at him. Her voice was stronger than before. "Where we go now?" The human looked at the horizon. His eyes hard but full of promise. "Forward," he said. "Always forward," she smiled faintly. For the first time, the future did not feel like death. It felt like a path she would not walk alone. She took his hand in her small fingers. The bond between them sealed in silence. Together they stepped out of the ruins. The wasteland stretched far, full of dangers and shadows, but also full of unknown paths. The child's glowing eyes shone brighter. Her heart carried the word he had given her, hope, and as the sun rose high, casting light over the broken land, they walked side by side, a man who had fought many battles, and a child once abandoned, now bound by trust. The hunters would come again. The world would not welcome them. But it did not matter. The human had made his choice. The child had found her strength. Together, they would face whatever waited. Together, they were no longer lost, no longer alone. Together, they were the beginning of something new,